Breaking news out of South Africa, where News 24 and the Daily Maverick report that Agricultural Minister John Steenhuisen has asked his controversial Chief of Staff, Ramon Cabanac, to resign.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that since Simon's down in Boulders. Folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa.
News 24 says that when asked for the reason for this decision, Steenhuisen said it was clear that the controversy surrounding, now I'm sure he didn't say this, the right-leaning podcaster's appointment was detracting from the excellent work his department is doing. He told News 24 that he would only comment further once the human resources processes are completed. Now, for its part, Daily Maverick has gleefully reported that Ramon Cabanac has been sacked. But he has not been sacked. Let's be very clear, as I've said repeatedly, Ramon Cabanac is not an employee of the Democratic Alliance. He is a civil servant who works for the government of South Africa and the taxpayers. You can't simply ask him to resign. Well, he could resign, but he hasn't resigned. So the Daily Maverick's gleeful headline is false, fake news, and incorrect. He has not been sacked. He's been asked to resign, and we'll see if he gets sacked. So what may appear strange in this saga is the lack of complaints from the African National Congress about Ramon Cabanac. Notice how little the ANC has said on this matter? Now, I wonder why that might be. Perhaps, as is becoming more apparent, the only folks who genuinely want Cabanac's ouster are the media, glitterati, and, indeed, members inside the Democratic Alliance itself, a party to which Cabanac doesn't belong. Now, is Ramon Cabanac the genuine target here? Or is this an internal power struggle to tarnish, wound, and remove John Steenhuisen as the party leader? If one is objective in this story, there's sufficient reason for this to be credible. Under his leadership, the Democratic Alliance entered into a coalition with the ANC, a party whom the DA swore to remove from governance at the national level at all costs. Yet they joined a coalition with him. Steenhuisen's big idea was the so-called Moonshot Pact, which he plagiarized from JFK, an idea that never got off the ground. The multi-party charter agreement did not move the needle, and the entire scheme to oust the ANC collapsed, along with the MPC, as none of the MPC parties did well in the election, save for the Inkatha Freedom Party, which gained a small percentage. While from a political standpoint, one can easily accept the reality of the situation and the decision to enter the so-called government of national unity, it nonetheless rankles many Democratic Alliance members, voters, and financial backers. The DA claims to be a winner in the 2024 election. But folks, that's just putting lipstick on a pig. The party has cratered since the heights it reached under Helen Zille back in 2014, now down about 15% in vote total, over 550,000 votes fewer than she got. Now, Mmusi Maimane was sacked for losing votes. John Steenhuisen has also lost votes, yet he remains the party leader. In this election in 2024, the Democratic Alliance, with everything going on, with load shedding, with corruption, with the failure, with the exposure, with the ANC's position on Gaza and the ICA and all this other stuff going on, by all accounts, the Democratic Alliance should have eclipsed 30% of the vote this year. But it didn't even come close. Instead, a weak Democratic Alliance was left to beg for crumbs in a government of national unity, while it was up to Helen Zille to put on a facade that the DA was in control of those negotiations with Fikile Mbalula. But Steenhuisen kept telling folks that he's in charge here. To me, it was very reminiscent of Alexander Haig telling the press he was running things after Reagan was shot. Incorrect and embarrassing. Now, far from being a winner, as it claimed, the Democratic Alliance is not even fairly represented in the cabinet. The entire security and justice cluster remains, as I predicted, firmly under ANC control. A radical black nationalist expropriation-centered party controls land reform, a competency that was removed from Steenhuisen's shrunken portfolio. So not exactly a good look. The Democratic Alliance has 19% of the ministerial appointments in the GNU, yet it brought 30% of the vote to the table, so it's underrepresented by 50% or 40%. All these points are reasons ambitious DA members seem to be gunning for John Steenhuisen. Now, top of that list may very well be Minister of Education Siviwe Gwaruba. The 35-year-old Rhodes University graduate has quietly climbed the ranks of the Democratic Alliance since becoming Lindiwe Mazibuko's spokesperson back in 2012. Her appointment as Minister of Education surprised many observers. Her failure to publicly argue against the Bella education bill that Ramaphosa is set to sign on Friday the 13th, is, however, less surprising. Gwarube is a political caste member. She's never held a job, never signed a paycheck. She's a caterer. Is she one of the young guns aiming for Steenhuisen? Time will tell. Now, folks, the shame here is that by all accounts, Steenhuisen is off to a good start as minister, as evidenced by him dutifully licking the boots of the ANC's Chinese communist overlords during the FOCAC trip. Now, as this saga is unfolded, the initial attacks centered on questioning Steenhuisen's judgment in hiring Roman Cabanac. At this stage, fair-minded folk will also now begin to question his judgment, or at a minimum, his courage, not just the media who questioned it. The personal smears, the targeting, and condescending comments from social media, and especially from so-called journalists, is hardly surprising. Did John Steenhuisen not see this coming? Did he think that now that the DA is in bed with the African National Congress, that the press would give him a free pass? Folks, Roman pissed off a lot of lazy journalists with his often brash, challenging, and at times controversial presence on social media, eating away at the authority and even the viewership the once, long ago, trusted legacy media enjoyed a monopoly over. As the Klingon proverb says, revenge is a dish best served cold. Now that lazy journalist class have counted coup and gotten their scalp, Roman is left at the braai with no flames. Perhaps the final nail, though it's obvious there was always going to be a final nail in this coffin, was Cabanac's bizarre capitulation letter posted on Twitter on, of all days, September 11th. In it, he foolishly said, "I push boundaries to gain attention on social media and sometimes made divisive, idle, and poorly considered statements in the heat of online journalism. While some of my criticisms were well-founded, I also admit that others were insensitive and provocative, driven by the desire to invite debate." Well, Roman's capitulation letter has certainly done that. Not missing a beat, Condom Dan Quarters smears Cabanac on Twitter. "The grifter admits that he used you." Ouch. While the repulsive Quarter is predictably crass and impolite, what exactly did Cabanac expect the response to be to his letter posted on Twitter? Funny enough, there is a comical part at the end of Quarter's post. "He built his business off you." Well, duh. Who was he supposed to build it off of, Dan? Mongolians? Who exactly did you build your business off of, Dan? Farsi goat herders? I mean, that makes sense, given your adoration for beanies. This brings us back to John Steenhuisen. Will he survive? He's long been cordial with Ramaphosa, and minus land reform, John runs a ministry that ANC desperately needs cleaned up. For now, Steenhuisen will be safe as minister. However, Steenhuisen is irreparably harmed as a DA leader and unlikely to survive challenges for his leadership going forward. Finally, this brings us to a problem few discuss in the media, namely the treasonous disloyalty of Democratic Alliance party members. Clearly, the DA has many members who collude with the media to embarrass their own party, damage or oust opponents. At least, historically, the African National Congress had unity. The nexus of ambitious, disloyal DA party members and corrupt, lazy legacy media explains why we frequently hear all too often of unnamed, well-placed sources. At the end of the day, we see a cowardly capitulation by John Steenhuisen and misconduct by the media. Like him or dislike him, Roman Cabanac is a state employee, a civil servant. He's not violated the Civil Service Code, is not accused of any misconduct, nor of any crime. Yet Steenhuisen, who hired him, has asked Cabanac to resign 6 weeks into his tenure as chief of staff. And he has no cause. Cabanac should not resign. Make them sack him. There's no cause to sack Cabanac. Consequently, this will cost taxpayers and potentially could cost the media and the Democratic Alliance financially as well, should Cabanac pursue legal cases against them for unlawful termination and, in the media's case, for libel. If Roman Cabanac is fired, what do we get as outcomes? Well, we get a gleeful, corrupt media getting away with character assassination yet again, and possibly with libel. And we get a lot of journalists counting coup for the perceived slights that Roman has done to them. We get a weak, cowardly Democratic Alliance party leader ripe to be deposed. And we get irony. The irony that Julius Malema sits in Parliament accused of numerous crimes, taken repeatedly to trial for crimes, censored by Parliament. Zwelin Mkhize sits in Parliament after criminal conduct, as per the Special Investigating Unit. Ramaphosa sits there after the Pala Pala scandal. Yet Roman Cabanac must go because he made hurtful tweets. Malema sings "Kill the Boer" and people get butchered. Politics, folks. It's not real. It's not the sane world, is it? What say you? Thanks a lot.